Have you ever reacted in a way that shocked you? A sudden outburst, a harsh judgment, or an intense wave of emotion that seemed larger than the moment? Later, you felt confused. You asked yourself, where did that come from? Have you ever disliked someone immediately, even though they had done nothing wrong? Something about them stirred discomfort. Their voice, their confidence, or their silence unsettled you. You could not explain it, but the reaction was real. We often think these moments are random, but they are not. They are signs, signals from within. Something deeper is being activated, something we have not faced. A part of us that lives in silence, but still shapes the way we see the world. Carl Jung believed that the human mind holds more than what we are aware of. Beneath our conscious identity lives a hidden self. It holds the traits, desires, emotions, and impulses we deny. Call this unseen part of the psyche the shadow. The shadow is not a myth. It is not a metaphor. It is real. It lives in the background of our lives, shaping our reactions, choices, and fears. And the less we acknowledge it, the more power it holds. It is always with us, whether we see it or not. The shadow contains the things we were told to suppress. Maybe it is anger. Maybe it is fear. Maybe it is need. These traits were not safe to express, so we buried them. But what is buried is not gone. It waits for the right moment to return. It returns when we are tired, when we are triggered, when we feel vulnerable. It slips out in sarcasm, blame, or withdrawal. It makes us feel like strangers to ourselves. And it leaves us wondering why we act in ways we do not understand. Jung warned that unless we become aware of the shadow, it will guide our lives without our knowing. We will call it fate or bad luck or other people's fault, but in truth, it is us. It is what we refuse to see acting from behind the curtain. This video is an invitation to turn inward, to stop running from the parts of you that you do not understand. Because the truth is simple. You cannot become whole if you only accept the parts that are easy to love. You must face the rest. Carl Jung was a Swiss psychiatrist who devoted his life to understanding the depths of the human mind. He believed that psychology must not only treat symptoms, but guide us toward meaning. To him, healing was a process of becoming whole. He began as a collaborator of Sigmund Freud, working together in the early study of the unconscious. But their paths soon diverged. Jung saw that the psyche held more than repressed desire. He believed it carried mystery, myth, and the longing for transformation. Jung introduced concepts that changed the way we see ourselves. Archetypes, the persona, the collective unconscious, and the shadow. These were not just theories. They were living forces that shaped human behavior across all cultures and all times. He believed that each person carries a potential for wholeness, but that potential must be uncovered. It is not found through success or control. It is found through inner confrontation, especially with the parts of ourselves we would rather avoid. Jung's work has influenced psychology, art, spirituality, literature, and film. He did not promise quick answers. He pointed toward deep questions, and in doing so, he gave us a map, a way to return to the truth we have hidden from ourselves. Carl Jung defined the shadow as the part of ourselves that we reject or ignore. It is not a flaw to be eliminated, but a dimension of the psyche that remains hidden. The shadow holds everything we do not want to admit we carry. It includes anger, envy, pride, fear, and desire. But it also contains strength, passion, creativity, and sensitivity we once disowned. These qualities were pushed aside to meet expectations, to feel safe, or to belong in the world around us. The shadow is formed early in life. When a child learns that certain feelings are not welcome, they hide them, not because they are wrong, but because they feel dangerous. What is hidden becomes unconscious, and what is unconscious becomes powerful. Jung emphasized that the shadow is not evil. It is simply unconscious. It is not the enemy, but the unknown. And what remains unknown does not sit still. It acts without permission. It enters our relationships, our work, and our moments of silence. You might think you have chosen your path freely, but what if your fear of failure is not really yours? What if your drive to succeed is hiding shame? The shadow influences our choices not through logic, but through emotion we cannot name. We all have a version of ourselves that we try to project to the world, composed, reasonable, acceptable self. But beneath that image lives everything we believe must stay hidden. The tension between these two selves creates inner conflict. When the shadow is ignored, it becomes destructive, surfaces as addiction, anxiety, projection, or judgment. We attack in others what we deny in ourselves. We fear in others what we fear within. And still, we remain unaware. But when we begin to face it, the shadow becomes a source of insight. It shows us what we have abandoned. It gives voice to the lost parts of the self. It calls us to integrate what is broken, not by erasing it, but by bringing it into light. To Jung, the shadow was not a problem to fix. It was a doorway. Through it, we encounter our true nature. It's not just the polished surface, but the full range of what it means to be human. And only by facing it can we become whole. The shadow is often mistaken as something dark and dangerous. But Jung warned us not to moralize the unconscious. The shadow is not evil by nature. It becomes harmful only when denied, distorted, or ignored over time. Most of what lives in the shadow is simply unlived life. Traits we suppress to survive. Emotions we learn to fear. Needs we were told to hide. They were not wrong, they were human. But they did not fit the story we were allowed to live. A child who is punished for anger might grow up to fear their own power. A teenager shamed for sensitivity might bury their empathy. These buried traits become part of the shadow. They do not disappear. They wait for a moment to return. The shadow is not only about darkness, it includes potential. It holds the courage we denied, the sensuality we avoided, the creativity we dismissed. What we call dark is often just unloved. What we reject may be exactly what we need to grow. When we avoid the shadow, we split ourselves in two. We become partial, performative, disconnected. We smile while feeling empty. We act confident while hiding shame. The mask becomes thicker, but the hidden self does not vanish beneath it. Jung believed that the path to wholeness lies in embracing what is incomplete. That does not mean we act out every impulse. It means we listen. We allow the parts of us we have exiled to speak. We bring them back into the circle of the self. To meet the shadow is to meet our humanity. It is to say yes to the parts of us we once said no to. It is to stop performing goodness and begin embodying truth. Not the clean version of ourselves, but the honest and full one. Transformation does not happen through denial. It happens through recognition. When we see the shadow without fear or judgment, it softens. It begins to move. No longer controls us from the dark. It becomes part of who we are. The shadow does not remain quiet. It speaks in subtle ways. It speaks through habits we cannot break, through reactions we cannot explain, through patterns we cannot see until they repeat. It hides behind the ordinary moments of everyday life. We all have emotional triggers, moments when our reaction is stronger than the situation. Someone interrupts us, and we feel disrespected. Someone succeeds, and we feel inferior. The outer moment touches an inner wound that is never fully healed. We project the shadow onto others. We judge what we secretly fear in ourselves. Accuse others of being selfish while ignoring our own unmet needs. We dislike arrogance, yet envy confidence. Projection protects us from what we do not want to face. The shadow also creates inner sabotage. We fear being seen, so we hold back our voice. We fear rejection, so we end things before they begin. We fear failure, so we avoid challenge. These fears come not from logic, but from pain stored in silence. Sometimes the shadow hides behind perfectionism. We strive to be flawless to avoid the shame of being human. But the more we chase the image of control, the more we lose touch with our real self. The fear beneath the effort goes unaddressed. In relationships, the shadow shapes how we love and how we push love away. It drives possessiveness, insecurity, and blame. It makes us fear intimacy while longing for it. We fight others for things we have never given to ourselves. In work, the shadow hides behind overachievement or procrastination. We fear being exposed as inadequate, so we obsess over every detail. Or we fear success because it threatens our self-image. Either way, the unconscious writes the script. Unacknowledged shame becomes self-criticism. Buried fear becomes anxiety. Rejected desire becomes resentment. These are not isolated emotions. They are the voice of the shadow. Not to punish us, but to wake us up to something we have ignored. The shadow influences everything we do not question. The way we defend, withdraw, overreact, or control. Till we bring it into awareness, it will continue to lead us. But the moment we name it, we begin to take our power back. Jung once said that until you make the unconscious conscious, It will direct your life, and you will call it fate. This is not just a poetic insight, it is a psychological truth. What we ignore within us will find a way to lead us anyway. The shadow does not disappear through silence. When left unexamined, it grows in the dark. It becomes the quiet voice that whispers doubt. It becomes the impulse that ruins connection. It becomes the fear that governs our most important decisions. The more we reject the shadow, the more reactive we become. We get defensive when criticized, envious when others shine, or numb when life demands feeling. The shadow acts in our name, but without our permission, speaks through reaction, not reflection. Some people live their entire lives avoiding their shadow. They build personalities on top of it, achievements, personas, polished images. But behind the surface, they feel disconnected. They wonder why success does not bring peace or clarity. When the shadow is ignored, it does not vanish. It leaks out. It enters our words, our posture, our silence. It shapes the way we look at others and how we treat ourselves. We think we are rational, but we are being ruled by what is unresolved. Jung saw repression as a threat to inner balance. The more we push something down, the more it gathers force. One day it erupts, not because it is evil, but because it was never given space. The denied self always finds a way back. Real change does not begin with trying to be better. It begins with honesty, to ask, what am I not seeing? What have I been avoiding? This is the work of inner freedom. Not perfection, but awareness. Not performance, but truth. To face the shadow is not weakness. It is strength. It is the courage to meet the parts of ourselves we have feared, and in doing so, to reclaim the energy, clarity, and integrity we lost while trying to keep them out of sight. The shadow is not an abstract theory. It shows up in daily life, disguised as habit, emotion, and reaction. It appears when we argue, when we hesitate, when we fall silent. It moves through us without asking, but always asking to be seen. In relationships, the shadow often hides behind blame. We accuse others of being selfish, distant, or controlling. But beneath that judgment lies something personal, something unresolved. The pain we project on others is often pain we have not explored within. We often fall in love with people who reflect our unlived qualities. Their intensity attracts us. Their boldness fascinates us. But over time, what once drew us in begins to irritate us. We are confronted with what we rejected in ourselves. Jealousy is a clear expression of the shadow. It is not only fear of loss, it is fear of being unseen, unloved, or forgotten. That fear comes not from the other person, but from old wounds that have never found a safe place to heal. Arguments often repeat themselves. Words may change, but the energy feels familiar. One partner withdraws, the other chases. One criticizes, the other defends. These patterns are not random. They reveal where the shadow has taken control. In work, the shadow can appear through overachievement. We seek success not for fulfillment, but to cover feelings of inadequacy. We want recognition, but fear exposure. Crave control, because without it we feel unsafe in the world. Imposter syndrome is another form of shadow. It speaks through the voice that says we are not enough. Even when we succeed, we wait to be found out. We doubt our worth, because part of us still believes the early story that we must hide. Sometimes we procrastinate not because we are lazy, but because part of us fears what success might reveal. The shadow tells us it is better to delay than to be seen and possibly judged. So we wait, and in the waiting we suffer. The shadow also shows up in our inner life. It whispers at night. It rises in dreams. It colors how we speak to ourselves, call ourselves names we would never use on others. We punish our vulnerability instead of protecting it. We may carry deep guilt that was never ours. We may feel responsible for things far beyond our control. We may fear joy, because joy feels fragile. The shadow hides in these quiet places, not to harm us, but to remind us of what still aches. The more we avoid these signals, the more they intensify. Anxiety grows, exhaustion deepens. We lose connection to our inner life. But if we turn toward the discomfort with curiosity instead of shame, the shadow begins to soften. The goal is not to eliminate the shadow. It is to recognize when it is present. When we can name what is hidden, we create space. In that space, choice returns. We are no longer reacting, we are responding. That is where growth begins. Carl Jung did not tell us to destroy the shadow. He warned us against that instinct. What we fight within ourselves grows stronger. What we refuse to see turns against us. Well, the solution is not war, it is awareness. Not suppression, but integration. To integrate the shadow is to bring it into the light of consciousness. This means observing our emotions without judgment. Watching when we are triggered, when we are defensive, when we overreact. These moments are not mistakes. They are messages. The shadow is not trying to harm us. It is trying to get our attention. When anger erupts, it often protects something vulnerable. When envy appears, it points to a desire we have not named. Every dark emotion carries a thread of truth within it. Jung believed that by making the unconscious conscious, we reclaim our freedom. We are no longer puppets of hidden fear. We become authors of our own response. This is not easy work. It requires honesty, patience, and a willingness to feel discomfort. The first step is observation. When something stings, pause. Ask yourself why. Look beneath the surface. What story is being activated? What part of you feels exposed? The goal is not to fix the feeling, but to listen to it with care. Many people try to bypass this process. They want light without shadow. But real transformation does not come from imagining goodness. It comes from making space for the unwanted parts of the self. Jung said that this is where true enlightenment begins. To see the shadow clearly is not to become it. It is to create space around it. Enough space to choose differently. We stop reacting automatically. We begin to respond with awareness. This shift, though subtle, changes everything. When we stop fighting the shadow, it softens. When we name it, it loses power. When we listen to it, it transforms. Not into something perfect, but into something human, something real. Something that belongs within the whole of who we are. Shadow work begins with awareness. The first tool is observation. Notice your reactions. The moment you feel triggered, pause. Do not rush to explain or defend. Just feel. Ask yourself, what am I afraid of in this moment? What part of me feels unseen? Keep a journal, write without editing. Let your thoughts come as they are. When something hurts or unsettles you, describe it. Then ask, what emotion is beneath this? What memory does it remind me of? Writing slows the mind and reveals the hidden voice. Dreams are a gateway to the unconscious. Encourage recording dreams the moment you wake. Symbols, faces, animals, landscapes, they are not random. They are metaphors sent by the deeper mind. Do not interpret too quickly. Let them speak over time. You can also practice active imagination. This means allowing a conversation between your conscious self and a figure or feeling from your inner world. It may be an image from a dream. It may be a sensation in your body. Sit with it. Ask what it wants. This practice is not about control. It is about relationship. You are building trust with parts of yourself you have ignored. Ask with sincerity. Listen with patience. Sometimes the answer comes in words. Sometimes it comes in tears or silence. Shadow work is slow and personal. There is no map that fits everyone. Some days will bring clarity. Others will feel heavy. What matters is consistency. The willingness to return. The courage to feel. The humility to not always understand. Avoid the trap of moral judgment. The shadow is not good or bad. It simply is. When shame arises, meet it gently. When resistance appears, notice it without force. The more you allow, the more the shadow reveals its intelligence and intention. If you need support, seek it. It's not to be told who you are, but to feel safe enough to explore. A therapist, a trusted friend, or a teacher who honors your inner process can be a valuable mirror. You do not have to do this work alone. Jung wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." This sentence is not just poetic. It is a call to the deepest kind of honesty, to meet the parts of ourselves we try hardest to avoid. Many people seek the light. They chase positivity, affirmation, and spiritual ideals. But light without shadow is not truth. It is illusion. The brightest surface means nothing if the darkness beneath it remains untouched and misunderstood. Enlightenment is not about escape. It is about inclusion. It means turning toward what is uncomfortable and asking what it has to teach. Not to glorify pain, but to understand that transformation begins where denial ends. The darkness Jung spoke of is not some external evil. It is the parts of ourselves we have labeled wrong, dangerous, or weak. Our vulnerability, our rage, our longing, our shame. These do not disappear when we look away. They wait to be felt. To make the darkness conscious is to walk through life with open eyes. It is to feel fear without letting it rule. It is to hear anger without blindly obeying it. It is to hold space for the truth that we are never only one thing. The more we bring light into the shadow, the more whole we become. Not perfect, not pure, but integrated, grounded, real. This kind of light does not blind. It reveals. It helps us live with complexity instead of being crushed by it. Jung taught that the shadow is not our enemy. It is our teacher. It is the part of us that holds the treasure we left behind when we tried to become who the world wanted. To retrieve it is to return to something honest, ancient, and alive. Most people think self-discovery means finding their passion, identifying strengths, or building confidence. But Jung taught something deeper. Real self-discovery begins not with what we want to be, but with the courage to face what we have refused to see. To know yourself is not to craft a perfect version of your identity. It is to uncover what was buried. The shame, the fear, the voice that was silenced, the parts you left behind to become acceptable. Wholeness requires you to go back and bring them home. Every myth speaks of a treasure hidden in the dark. A dragon guarding a cave, a hero descending into the underworld. These stories are not about fantasy. They are maps of the human psyche. The gold lives beneath the part of us we fear the most. You cannot discover your true self without passing through the shadow, because your real self includes what you denied. Not just your beauty, but your wounds. Not just your gifts, but your contradictions. That is what makes you fully human. To meet yourself means to sit in silence and feel what arises. It means letting old grief speak, letting rage breathe, letting joy return without apology. It means trusting that nothing inside you is there by accident. It all belongs. Shadow work is not a detour. It is the doorway. Every time you meet a part of yourself you once rejected, something opens. Compassion grows. Depth returns. You begin to feel connected not only to yourself, but to the human story as a whole. Jung believed that the shadow is not just a container of pain. It is also a reservoir of life. What we exile is not only what hurts, but also what is powerful. The strength we feared, the passion we suppressed, the voice we silenced long ago. When you begin to face the shadow, you do not just find wounds. You find energy, vitality, intensity. You begin to remember what it feels like to be fully alive, not safe, not controlled, but whole, present, awake in your own body. Many people feel numb not because they lack joy, but because they have cut off their anger. Others feel dull because they buried their sensuality or instinct. The more you avoid the shadow, the more disconnected you feel from the pulse of your own life. Courage often lives in the shadow. So does creativity. So does desire. These qualities may have been too much for your childhood environment, too loud, too wild, too honest, so they were hidden, but they never lost their power, only their voice. To reclaim your shadow is to reclaim your fire, not to be reckless, not to dominate, but to allow yourself to feel fully, to speak truthfully, to act with clarity, to know that your power does not make you dangerous. It makes you real. The integration of the shadow is not the end of suffering, but it is the end of self-abandonment. It is the moment you stop leaving pieces of yourself behind just to fit in. It is the moment you return to your own depth with open arms. You do not need to become someone else. You need to include who you have always been. The shadow is not outside of you. It is the forgotten face of your strength. When you turn toward it with love, it becomes your ally, not your enemy. If you feel lost, maybe it is not light you need. Maybe it is the courage to face your darkness, to turn toward the place inside you that you have ignored, the place that still aches. the part of you that is waited to be seen. You do not need to fix yourself. You need to meet yourself, fully, without judgment, without the need to be better. The self you are looking for is not ahead of you. It is behind the mask you have been wearing for far too long. The shadow is not something to overcome. It is something to befriend. It is your fear asking to be held. It is your grief asking to be honored. It is your truth asking to be spoken. Nothing more, nothing less. Just your own reflection, waiting. Jung did not teach perfection. He taught wholeness. Believed that healing comes when we include, not when we erase. When we forgive, not when we forget. When we allow contradiction, rather than forcing clarity. That is how we become real. Ask yourself gently, what am I still hiding from myself? What truth have I been afraid to see? These are not questions to answer quickly. They are questions to live with. Questions that open the door to something ancient, honest, and true. The journey inward is not always easy, but it is always worth it. Every step you take toward your shadow is a step back to your center. And when you return to yourself, not in pieces, but whole, something silent inside begins to breathe again.